at the State House of Assembly, leading to the postponement of the inauguration of the 7th Assembly announced by the Clerk of the House. And 13 members of the House who were on ground are said to be in support of a member, Daniel Ogazi, vying for the leader of the House and insisting that the postponement of the inauguration was illegal. And meanwhile, 11 other members who are in support of the incumbent Speaker, Ibrahim Balarabe, were conspicuously absent for the inauguration. But the development that is coming from the state is that they have 2 speakers, 2, the way it is now. They now have 2 speakers. The 13 members elected their speaker, then this 11 members elected their speaker. So the drama is getting very interesting, and it seems that Nasarawa State House of Assembly issue will be in the media this season. And just this morning, the assembly complex was barricaded by security agencies with nobody allowed into the complex. But let's quickly hear from them and see what happened.
I also want to appreciate the good people of Nasarawa State whom have trooped out today in solidarity of these 13 members elect. What is happening today is unfortunate. What is happening today is an attempt to truncate democracy. What is happening today is an attempt for the executive to take over the legislature. And what is happening today is an attempt for imposition of the leadership of the Nasarawa State House of Assembly. And that is why 13 of us, whom we are here in solidarity of my humble self, to go in and perform our legitimate constitutional responsibility to elect the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker. Unfortunately, we are here, the security men blocked the gate, saying it is an order from above. And the order from above, we are waiting for the above to come and open the gate for us.
It's getting interesting, and what is happening in Nasarawa is just trying to bring back memories of what happened in Edo State in 2015, and it was so sad that 14 members of the Edo State House of Assembly were not allowed into the complex until the last election. They couldn't sit, they were not inaugurated. And now look at it's playing out in Nasarawa. 13 members are on this side and 11 members on the side of the incumbent party. It's going to be very interesting. I do not know where the governor's proclamation letter will go to, because we'll get to find out from them. Probably we may be talking to the 2 sides when we are able to get in contact with anyone who will join the program, either next tomorrow or thereabout. But as it is now, let's quickly go to the main thing that is happening in Nigeria today. The Nigerian Labour Congress NLC and the Trade Union Congress TUC on Monday said they will no longer proceed with the nationwide strike planned for Wednesday. In a notice released after a meeting which held on Monday between the NLC, TUC and the federal government, they fixed the next meeting for June 19, 2023 to agree on an implementation framework.
The following resolutions were reached. 1. The federal government, the TUC and the NLC to establish a joint committee to review the proposal for any wage increase or award and establish a framework and timeline for implementation. The TUC and the NLC to review World Bank Finance Cash Transfer Scheme and propose inclusion of low-income earners in the program. As you are aware, the $800 million loan did not really capture the low-income government workers. So basically, we'll continue the ongoing engagements with the federal government and secure closure on the resolutions above?
These are the framework for us to follow in achieving some of the agreements reached here. You can see that nothing is yet in concrete terms. So at a joint date, we'll go into more specifics to make sure this knotty issue is resolved.
So for us, from Labour, we are totally committed to get these issues resolved for the benefit of the entire Nigerians.
Of course, that was the outcome of the meeting late last night. And in the last 2 decades of Nigeria's political economic system, there have been moves to end the subsidy regime. But each time it is mentioned, politics sets in. And you see politicians going into the whole issue, making it look as if it's a confusion. We don't forget in a hurry how the former President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan's administration was blackmailed and called wicked for daring to announce the removal of oil subsidy on January 1, 2012. And in 2022, the Buhari administration tried removing subsidy from petrol. It was also rejected. But today, those who championed the war against subsidy removal during the Jonathan administration have seen cause to end it. On Monday, May 29, Inauguration Day, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, at the end of his inaugural speech, said, and I quote, he said, "Let us develop a shared sense of fairness and equality. To me, political coloration has faded away. Nigeria will be impartially convened by the rule of law. Fuel subsidy is gone. The funds for subsidy will be rechanneled to better infrastructure and investment. An interest rate is currently too high. It will have to come down. Hope is back for Nigeria. Just let us be united." End of quote. What will the removal of subsidy benefit the generality of Nigerians? What about the effect on the ordinary Nigerian? Is the removal of subsidy a must, or it is a politics? That's it. Is it a politics or is it a must? And joining me via Zoom from Benin City is a former member of the House of Representatives, Sansi Osaigi. Thank you so much, Honorable, for joining us on the program tonight.
Ijoma, it's nice being with you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. We appreciate. And we also have all the way from Geneva, the President Director General of Michael Imodu National Institute for Labor Studies, Ilori. He was also a labor leader, Comrade Issa Remu. I don't know if he has joined us all the way from Geneva. Comrade, thank you for joining us.
Well, I'm hearing you. Good evening. Thank you, Joma.
We appreciate.
All
right.
I hope you are hearing me.
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you very well, comrade.
My compliment to my brother, Honorable Sagi.
Okay. Honorable, thank you so much, Honorable, for joining us again. I saw your article, and it was an interesting piece. You tried to see the good side of subsidy, why we shouldn't pay subsidy, and you also tried to see why some persons are playing politics with the removal of subsidy. So let's just hear from you what you think. What is this about subsidy that is so scary to government?
Yes, thank you, Ijoma. And I think at this point in our life, first of all, let me convey my sincere condolences to the Dr. C's family and the DAAR Communications family for the demise of the Chairman, Managing Director of DAAR Communications. Indeed, he was a colossus in the media world, and he did made very tremendous impact in the sands of time. Having said that, let me say that at this point in time, Nigerians should no longer be hoodwinked into what subsidy is all about. Years before now, we can say, yes, there was a lot of ignorance about what it actually entails. It is no longer news today that subsidy according to the presidential candidate of Labour Party, appears to be an organized crime meant to just swindle the entire nation. And in my article, I did say that it wasn't intended to be a lasting policy measure for the purpose of running the oil economy of Nigeria. I recall that when our refineries were getting down, these stopgap measures were employed, import fuel, import refined products until the refineries are fixed, so that they can be stopgap measures. But they soon became the norm, and those who were benefiting from it started fighting for it to stay, and it has stayed, bled the nation, to the state that it is now. Now, let me tell you why it is getting to government. The immediate Part Minister of Finance told us, and of course the president told us during the presentation of his last budget, that a whopping sum of 3.6 trillion naira will go into subsidizing fuel for the fiscal year of 2023. Do you know what that means? And I asked the question in my article, how has the life of the ordinary Nigeria been since government have been subsidizing fuel? Can we say it has been for the better? And I think the question is no, because there have been other issues that have combined to make life, less meaningful for the Nigerian people. So to answer your question, the gargantuan sum of money that the monster called fuel subsidy has come to be taken from our economy is affecting the very fiber of our national life, so much so that if government does not do away with it, like the vice president said, then subsidy will do away with Nigeria. We can't afford that anymore. And we have seen, in the course of my being in the legislature, I have come to see that there are emergency billionaires in dollars and in naira who, through some phantom transactions in oil importation, they go home with a lot of that can sustain that. And I believe that at this point in time, Nigerians are sufficiently enlightened enough to understand. And the good thing about this time is that prior to this election, all the presidential candidates, both the frontline presidential candidates and the other presidential candidate of the other political parties, numbering 18, they all agreed if there was anything that was of common interest, that there was consensus added them among all the political parties and their candidates in the last election, it was the fact that subsidy has to go. So the president has not done anything untoward to have said that subsidy is no longer sustainable and it must go. So it is scary, and no government at this point in time can dare to sustain subsidy. We just have to manage, make do with it, and begin, to live with it. We hope that with time, government will be able to channel the benefits into other social services that will cushion the effects on the part of the citizens.
All right, let's go to Comrade Aremu. Oh, okay. Yes, Honorable, if I may ask, you have said you have used the word hope.
I'm with you.
Okay. Okay, Comrade Aremu, he has used the word hope. But as it stands now, we know what is happening on the streets. Nigerians are actually getting the heat, because it is not easy for someone whose salary, the minimum wage is about 18,000 naira or thereabout, and the same person will have to use that money to pay for either fuel or to pay for transport to work. So what happens to feeding and all that? So the question a lot of them are asking is, yes, subsidy removal, good, a beautiful idea, but why didn't government look at the effect and try to cushion the effect, or try to either make our refineries work, or try as much as possible to bring in palliatives, either something to cushion the effect of transportation, provide mass transit buses the way they did in some states, before even coming out to say, okay, we are dropping subsidy because it is getting really tough. Now, as a labor leader that you have always been, and you're still in the institution now, what do you think government should have done so that Nigerians don't come out on the street on a daily basis to start saying it is hard? That's the language I hear today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Hijoma, once again for offering this platform for us to reflect on this major policy change that is taking place in the country. First, I would like to commend both the federal government as well as organized labor for having a common ground at the end of the day over the issues. I've also made some comments. I've intervened that whatever crisis we have, whatever challenges we have, we can only resolve them through social dialogue, through negotiation, through discussions, because in the world of work, the only tool available to us is, discussions, negotiations. Of course, you may invoke the power of strike or protest, but that cannot be the immediate thing. So I'm so excited. I'm happy that at the end of the day, the powerful tool of negotiation has prevailed. I'm talking to you in Geneva, where I came for the 111th ILO conference, and the opening remark of the Director General of the ILO, Gobert, the first African DJ, is to underscore the need for negotiation, for compromises, for consensus building. I want to salute the leadership of Nigeria Labour Congress and that of TUC, as well as the government for finding common ground. I agree with you. There are definitely fallout from this subsidy removal policy, but it's been on for quite some time, and this is why I also share the view of Honorable Sage that the challenge we have today is that due to declining public revenue and through the high cost of subsidy, it's simply unsustainable. I was just checking the figure now. The Lagos is the only trillion naira state. The trillion naira budget state with population of 20 million, close to 20 million. The Lagos 2023 budget this year is just 1.7 trillion. Idioma. If the largest state, sixth largest economy in Africa is having a budget of 1.7 trillion, and then we're spending close to 4.3 trillion annually on a product. This is certainly unsustainable. I've been in this business for long, you know very well, and I'm happy you underscore my profile. I could recollect in 1999, when Comrade Adams was the NSC president, we were fighting over fuel subsidy. It was about 150 million, 200 million per month. And I know President Obasanjo used to cry out that time, saying that give me that kind of money, what will I have done to fix teaching hospitals? But now we are talking of 440 billion per month. It's simply unsustainable. But pointed to your question, what should be the way out? And I think that I'm happy a lot of ideas have emerged from what I've read from the communique of both the government and organized labor, is that we should use that money, first to improve on wage income of the working people. I agree with you, minimum wage. In fact, wages generally have really collapsed due to high cost of living, due to devaluation of the currency. So one way out is that kind of resources that were free from supporting one product should be made available to pay working men and women, and this way organized labor, using the instrumentality of our negotiating machinery, which has been in place. The current minimum wage came out of that negotiation process. The one before, they also came through that. We should use that, to really improve on the pay of the working people. Of course, we must also be concerned with those who are not, workers who are not as organized in formal sector. And this way, all those ideas that have been on board about how to help the public with public transport, the need for us to find a direct way to even do conditional transfer. In principle, and for conditional transfer of resources to ordinary people. How we manage it, could be the details. So what I want to say here is that I think the way out is that we should now put up our thinking cap to see how we can use those resources creatively. The whole crisis in the university, how much was academic staff asking for? in terms of intervention to revitalize the university. It's nothing compared to what we are burning on this product. So I really want to say that it's time for us to have policy change, policy direction. And I think the lesson of this development, Ijoma, is that all of us should prepare for a lot of reforms to transform Nigeria. Maybe what we need to do is how do we manage the reform? But reforms are inevitable. I'm very sure government must have also learned from this process to say that maybe the way we communicate, the way we put the issues, we learn from it. But the last point I quickly want to underscore is that I can see from the disposition of this government, especially President Bola Tinubu, that is accessible, is willing to discuss. It's not just with organized labor. I also learned that the health sector crisis is now over because presidents have met with the sector unions. I think that's the way to go. Even with that cabinet in place, we can see the disposition. And I'm not surprised because even during the campaign, Senator Bola Tinubu, as well as his vice, were the first to, first of all, meet to organize labor. I facilitated a data hall meeting as the director of the labor directorate. So he is home and dry with negotiation, with discussion with civil society and organized labor. But one good turn deserves another. And I'm happy the organized labor showed the reciprocity for the discussion. And we have avoided another round of stoppages, policy reversals with all the consequences that could have happened if the proposed protests had gone ahead. So I want to salute this discussion that the way to go is deepening social dialogue and negotiation. And definitely with more ideas, we will be able to, manage this reform very well in a win-win way.
Okay. Yeah. Honorable Samsi, yes, we are looking at, you have been able to tell us that subsidy is evil, according to you, relatively. But there are some information out there that even at the time that subsidy was being paid, it was not paid. It was not in force, that it was only going into the pockets of some few. Can you just throw more light to that for us?
Well, of course, Ijoma, that it is no longer secret that the regime of subsidy was characterized by unprecedented sleaze, manipulations, and corruption of the highest order. We can't deny that. For those of us who have the privilege of being in the legislature for some time, we can tell that from the revelations of the fuel subsidy probe in 2012 and 2013 in the House of Representatives, it is crystal clear that the regime of subsidy became so bastardized and so compromised that it led to a situation where there were phantom transactions, from which people were making benefits, all in the name of subsidy, even without importing a liter of fuel into the country. So it became so bad, and one cannot therefore be surprised that the astronomical rise in the cost of subsidizing fuel for the country became what it is, and now it is inevitably unbearable. So it is not out of place. It is not incorrect that it was abused, and that was to the detriment and to the hurt of this country. And that is the more reason why any government that is serious with providing social services and wanting to ensure that living conditions of the people are improved will not sustain a regime of subsidy arrangement where only a few people, would be taking home a large chunk of our collective patrimony. So to answer your question straight, it is correct that the subsidy regime has been grossly abused, and the fuel subsidy probe of 2012 in the House of Representatives and indeed the National Assembly has demonstrated that. If you look at the roll call today, you go back to records, you know how many people have been charged to court and prosecuted for fuel subsidy fraud, and they are in their numbers, and the figures involved are in billions and trillions of naira. So I want to say that no serious country can continue to do that. And I believe that the president has the courage to deal with this monster. And this monster, we must all collectively support the president to deal with. And I believe, like my brother has said, the director of Institute of Labor Studies, Comrade Desai Aremu, former vice president of NLC, it must be used very creatively and progressively in the interest of the people. Social services, must be subsidized at the end of the day. Social services will include health, education, housing, and all of that. Because the volume of money we are talking about is not a child's play. So, and of course, it is even better to subsidize workers, the citizens themselves, subsidize their own pay at the end of the day, rather than subsidize products, that earn more money for a few people at the end of the day. So I believe that this government will do that, and the courage to start and to finish is already being demonstrated. And I think labor and organized labor and civil society must continue to dialogue with government for better ideas to come forth to deal with the situation at the moment. If you notice now, fuel queues have virtually disappeared in our filling stations. And that tells you that even those who are obtaining subsidy for the products they are importing, we are at the same time holding these products because they wanted to sell at higher prices. We are not also unaware of how some of these products were taken after the shores of the country, to neighboring states. I mean, with this policy in place right now, we understand that our neighboring countries are already crying blue mother because it is also affecting them. So I believe it's a step in the right direction, and it's a loophole that this government must plug. We urge everybody to support government in this direction.
Thank you so much, Honorable Samson Osagie. We appreciate you for joining us on the program. But let's, before we go to take our second guest, who is already in the studio, let's go back to Comrade Desai Aremu. He has said that the queues have reduced, but that's because people don't have 535 naira, 514 naira that we buy in Abuja to buy a liter of fuel. And if you calculate it, with just 2,000 that you'd have used to buy almost half of your tank, this time around, for those who use for economic cars, this time around you have to spend even up to 30,000 naira for you to get good fuel. That's why people have parked their cars. So I still want to take you to the people, because it's quite important. We must also see the side of the people. Labour initially was asking for an increment in pay. Is that not a good one?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think, as I said, that the devil's in the details. But also, I also believe that there's so much godliness in some positive details. Agree that most people must have parked their vehicles, just like me too, before I left. I needed to adjust myself to which kind of movement we'll have to make because the prices have gone up. But you also know that even before this, policy changes, many parts of the country, people have been buying fuel at even higher than that price. I mean, you have to know, because this policy, I think it is clear more than ever before. The point has been made that it has been highly distorted. There's nothing inherently buying subsidy. But when you put this kind of resources, subsidizing only one product in which most of people made money, because there are a lot of opportunities for smuggling, there are a lot of opportunities for sleaze, just the way Honorable Osagie has put it. The entire pro panels, I mean, as of Rep. In fact, it turned out to be banana peel. So legislators pay heavy price. I mean, I don't want to mention names, you know very well. So when you have that kind of scandal in your hand, I don't think we can continue along that line. I think what we need to see is to move forward. And you have already set the template. We have to address the issue of income inequalities, including working poor pay for this. And you have said so. We have the instrument for negotiation, to improve the pay of the working people. Interestingly, President Bola Tinubu even mooted it himself, to say that it's time for wage improvement, and I think what we need to do is to make sure we negotiate. There's nothing inherently bad in subsidy. It's how you subsidize the people. Who are the people who are subsidizing? So it's good to subsidize the masses of Nigerian security workers, improve on their pay, provide public education, public transport, rather than putting products at one hand. But I don't know whether I'll be coming back, Ijoma. I wanted to also join comrade, Honorable Sage, who qualifies as a comrade. Was struggling to
That's correct. That's correct.
Thank you so much.
Our condolences to the DAAR communication on the demise of our mentor, of our leader, and you can see his legacy. AIT, you are providing platform for discussion. Chief Raymond, Dr. will be definitely be missed. He's a pride of the continent, very pro-labor, labor-friendly. He generously subsidizes our coverage. All our events on labor issues. May so rest in peace.
Amen. Thank you so much, Comrade Issa Aremu. We appreciate it. And Honorable Samsi, thank you for joining us on the program. Hopefully, we'll still be talking until we see the end to what you call the evil subsidy of regime. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ijoma. Nice having me.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. And in continuation with development in the issue of subsidy removal, where we have in the studio a political and development economist, Ayobami Oyalowo. So he's here, but thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good evening, Ijoma.
Welcome.
And I want to put in my condolences on the loss of the great chief himself. Send my condolences to his family and to all of you members of staff. May his soul rest in perfect peace.
Amen. So let's start from where he stopped, because I said we should go and listen to the former governor of Rivers State, but now that you're here, let's start from where he stopped.
I listened to his interview.
You listened to him, and he tried to proffer a solution to say yes.
Laughed.
Exactly. But let's weigh what he said. But there's nothing bad in what Wike has said. He said there are alternatives that government can put in place.
Yeah, I remember sometimes a few years ago, about 3 years or thereabout, they were talking about this gas into vehicles, changing some. I mean, for a country that has a lot of abundance of gas reserve, it won't be a bad idea for us to actually explore that initiative. I think between the Ministry of Petroleum, the immediate past government, and I think the Ministry of Labor, I can't remember which of the other ministries, they were collaborating on. They had some pilot project on it, but I don't think they saw to the end of it conclusively. Okay. So it won't be a bad option, especially for commercial vehicles. So that when you, because from what I understand, you spend about 20% of what you will spend on petrol if you're using gas. So it's actually cheaper and more efficient, but it takes a little bit of conversion here and there. And I think this will also speak to some of the plans that the President Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu has in his manifesto, talking about instead of importing so many vehicles into Nigeria, maybe we can begin to incentivize these companies to come in here and produce. So maybe this is something that they can incorporate into the production of vehicles in Nigeria. Rather than petrol, maybe we can look at gas as an alternative, because that could also help to lower the demand on PMS. And if you lower the demand on it, especially like I said, commercial vehicles, so that it will be cheaper for people who don't have their own vehicles and who will have to commute from home to work, for artisans who don't have formal employment but who are employed on their own, doing maybe a welder, a barber, and so on and so forth. So I think those are options we can actually explore. Okay,
but looking at the way it is now, subsidy is out. NNPC Limited increased fuel price, and Nigerians are asking, would the fuel price remain on this 500 and above, or because there are people who are saying it will get to 1,000
we must, no, you see, Nigeria, we need to stop the scaremongering. You see, PMS, petrol, fuel, whatever you want to call it, it's an internationally priced product. It could go down, it could go up, depending on the vagaries of the market. Just a few weeks back, the price of cooking gas was as high for that the normal 12.5 kilogram was as high as 12 to 13,000, depending on where you are buying.
That's for
as at the beginning of this week.
For 10 kg.
No, I think it's 12.5 kg.
12.5.
It's 12.5. Okay. That's the regular one that everybody is aware of. Everybody knows the one we're talking about. But as I speak to you now, it's between 6,500 to 7,000, depending on where you buy. Yeah.
I bought 8,000 last.
Well, 8,000 is not 12,000. You can see it's coming down. So what I'm trying to bring to you is that it will go down, depending on the vagaries of the market. In fact, today, I think it's today, Daily Trust reports that both cooking gas and jet A fuel, the price had dropped.
Because of the increase in...
No, I don't know whether it is because of that or not, but you should also remember, sometimes around this time last year, you remember the price of diesel went as high as 800, 900 naira per liter. Right now, as we speak, it's between 550 there, about 600.
Is this practical? Because
no, that is what you call market forces.
Okay.
Because right now, you don't sit down in one room and say, because of subsidy, this is what you must sell. Now, everything will have to depend. And then I think I saw a news today that NNPC has completely taken their hands off the normal crude swap and all they are doing. So which means now there will be more people playing in the market. Before, NNPC was the sole importer. Now others can import. And don't also forget that we are having our refineries, some of them have started working, not at optimal level, but a little bit here and there. The Dangote refinery will start working in 1 month's time.
That's a private refinery.
It does not matter. The federal government has promised that they will give to him crude in naira, not in dollars.
Okay.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
So that means no matter how it is, we will not buy high. And if international market price comes down, automatically it will come down here too. You remember there was a time this outgone government, this immediately past government, almost removed subsidy.
That was in 2022.
Exactly. Because the price of international crude dropped so much that whether subsidy or no subsidy was what we were buying at home then, the 150 or 60 that time. So clearly it is an internationally priced commodity, which will either go up or go down depending on the vagaries of the market. However, when you bring in all the players and you completely deregulate this sector, it helps to bring in players. You remember when we first had the telecoms company came into Nigeria in 2001 thereabout, then 1 minute of call was 50 naira. Whether it dropped after 2 seconds or not, you pay 50 naira. Your SIM card, the first set of people that bought SIM card for 50,000 naira then. People who bought the phone were now making joke of Nokia 3310. They were buying them for if you buy 3310 that time, for I was a young man in the bank. There's a place you hang it here, it makes you feel like a big man. Then that phone that I looked at here now was 50-something thousand naira that time. So to buy a full combo, then you are going to pay about 85,000 naira then. So, but today, a SIM card is free. In fact, if you pay, it is returned to you as airtime. You know that? So these things will naturally find their own habitat.
So
it is because it is the initial pain is what we are feeling.
It will also be with fuel.
It will become like that because it's a commodity. And when there are players playing in the market, if you go to some other countries today, I don't want to mention a specific country, but if you go to some countries today, you find that a station here will be selling, I'm using naira now because we are in naira economy, will be selling 200 naira per liter. Another station here will be selling 150. That's what he bought it on. So all these things will naturally come to bear over the course of time. So we just have to do what we have to do. I'm glad that it has happened. Because if it doesn't happen when it happened, we're going to postpone what we call the evil days. And these evil days will always come on us, whether we like it or we don't like it.
But let's look at what the past administration said. They paid for subsidy up to the end of June.
Yeah, well, I said that somewhere yesterday. Yes, that's what we were told, that they paid until the end of June. But I always say this. When it comes to Nigeria, you have to factor in the part of our wickedness and human greed. We are a wicked bunch of people. I always say this. And I will always give you this example. During the time of COVID, when everybody had to use a face mask, it was 50 naira per piece. And some Nigerians went as bad as selling for 1,000 naira per piece. You remember, you are alive. I'm not making up stories. So it is our human wickedness that the moment the president declared that subsidy is gone, people stopped selling instantly.
No, but
so
it
that
was
they will,
NNP,
so that,
NNPC
so that,
Limited.
no, so that they will create.
NNPC Limited
But
announced the
NNP,
price.
thank God you said limited. NNPC is no longer a government concern.
Exactly.
It is not a private company. So they joined it. I don't know why they did that. I am not the president, so I cannot say this is this or this is that. I was expecting that the prices will now be reflective maybe by the end of June. But unfortunately, everybody has. And if you tell them now that we are doing subsidy, let it go, then they will tell you they are having old stock. They will not adjust price downward until 2 months or 1 month. But if it go up, the price goes up immediately. It is our wickedness as a people. That one, you can't take it away from Nigerians. We are wicked people.
Let's look at what will the government, the Bola Ahmed Tinubu's government, do, especially for those who are most hit.
Well, I heard yesterday, I heard in a speech, I think it was on Friday, there is a particular speech that was posted. He was speaking with the governors of the APC. And the good thing I heard about it, he was talking from his heart, and he said something about, we have to review the salaries. You just have to. And I am very pleased that Labour was not belligerent. Labour has been cooperative. So clearly there must be an agreement and a convergence. But don't also forget, even though we hate to say the good stories, before President Buhari left office, are you aware that civil service salaries have been increased by 40%?
Wow.
Oh, and nobody's talking about it. Except for parastatals that have boards. All other civil service salaries was reviewed upward by 40%, but everybody pretended this did not happen. In fact, for those who got their own late, arrears were paid from January. So clearly, the Bola Ahmed Tinubu-led presidency has said they will review upward salaries. That is fine. And I also think that we have to look at people who don't work in formal environment. You see, when I was talking about gas, that's why I'm talking about the artisans, because they are in my heart. Nobody thinks about them, but they are Nigerians. So there must be models that will be put in place. I don't recommend this exactly. If the government wants my idea, we can sit down and say this, but I can tell you that clearly there will be models in place. Such model will include, but not limited to, probably conditional cash transfers to the poorest of the poor. We did it before during the COVID, when some schools, private companies, their staff salaries were paid for over 6 months or thereabout, at least 30,000 and above. So these are models that we can look at. There are other things we can look at, because every vulnerable Nigerian must be touched. Also, it is good that the Buhari-led government that left has started working on the trains and other things. We need to beef these things up, so that if public transportation system is efficient and effective, there will be less pain and agony on the people. Because the public transport, you can control the prices, you can make people do things the way you think it should be done. Private transportation, you can't control. So if the government work on this public transportation system, I mean, if you go to UK, for instance, they have some of the most efficient transportation system. You don't necessarily need to have a car. And here I must say one last thing here before we close. I am begging the state government. They are the wicked ones here. We put everything on the federal government. The state government needs to sit up and help Nigerians. Because most of us Nigerians live in the state. Our governors cannot continue to pretend like all the problems of Nigeria reside in Abuja. Our state governments and state governors need to also up their game, because with this fuel subsidy removal now, clearly there will be more money available for the governors to share in their fact. They need to touch the life of the poorest of the poor, not just the civil servants in their states.
Thank you so much, Ayobami Oyalowo, development and political economist. We appreciate you for coming.
Thank you, Ijoma.
Well, thank you too for being a part of this program. And this is where we say good night until we return 7 p.m. Tomorrow for another edition of the program. But it's late. I don't know if it's possible for us to listen to briefly the statement by the former governor of Rivers State, as well as the presidential candidate of Labour Party. If we're not able to take that, we'll take that when we return on the program tomorrow. But thank you for that. And follow me at EJ or Samo. Good night.
The negotiations ran into extra time and saw the COP27 presidency and parties locked in detailed discussions round the clock. Long days and nights, strained and sometimes tense, but they were working towards achieving one goal, an implementation work program that will contribute to keeping global temperature of 1.5 degrees Celsius alive.
We have struggled for 30 years on this path, and today in Sharm el-Sheikh, this journey has achieved its first positive milestone.
But we also wanted to take definitive steps forward. The pulse of 1.5 degrees was weak. Unfortunately, it remains on life support.
With the collective efforts of everyone in the world, including the ones that we are making in Nigeria on this HYPRED project, we know that collectively together we can keep it just within that range.
The issue of loss and damage was for the first time central to the agenda at COP. It was one of the key demands of developing countries to help them adapt to the devastating impact of climate change, for which they bear less blame.
We've been negotiating today and during the week to try to make sure that our representatives manage to get local councils into the agreement. Because if we're not in the agreement, we will not be on the receiving end of the finance either.
Financial pledges were made for loss and damage from multiple countries, including Austria, Belgium, Canada, France, Germany, and New Zealand, joining Denmark and Scotland, which had made pledges previously.
And more understanding.
Speaking about the historic decision, COP27 President Sameh Shoukry said, "We heard the calls and we responded. Today, here in Sharm el-Sheikh, we established the first ever dedicated fund for loss and damage, a fund that has been so long in the making. It was only appropriate that this COP, the implementation COP in Africa, is where the fund is finally established." End of quote. Other commitments made towards the implementation of climate action during COP27 include the United States announcing it will contribute $150 million as a down payment to initiatives to help Africa adapt to the changing climate, as well as announcement by a coalition of leading climate philanthropists to invest $500 million over the next 3 years to accelerate a just and equitable energy transition in low and middle-income countries.
My administration has also made the United States the first ever contributor to the Adaptation Fund last year, and this year we're doubling our pledge to bringing our total commitment to $100 million.
While climate change activists have expressed joy at this breakthrough, they are worried that action is yet to be taken on previous promises, including $100 billion pledged by the world's top emitters to help poorer countries cope with the impact of climate change.
What is happening is that what leaders are still promising us from the global north. And for me, I don't think it's a cup of implementation, it's a cup of talk.
They also frowned at the heavy presence of fossil fuel industry delegates, considered to be big polluters at COP, a move capable of whittling down negotiations.
It's neither here nor there, because the big emitters are also those who have the financial muscles to bring about some kind of change.
The activists want those responsible for climate change to see Loss and Damage Fund as taking responsibility for their climate-induced crisis and not as a charity to developing nations.
We're not begging. We are only saying that the global north owes ecological debts and that they should pay now.
Though the decisions at COP27 may not be satisfactory to all parties and groups, the work done in the 2 weeks of negotiations and the results achieved, according to COP President, are testaments to collective will as a community of nations that multilateral diplomacy still works.
What we need is more trust, more empathy, and more understanding. Our world deserves this. This process deserves this.
COP27, we've established the fund that will provide one pillar of the response required to ensure loss and damage is addressed.
It's been 2 weeks of long negotiations and long hours of deliberation by parties to the UN climate change agreement. And of course, the outcome is being interrogated in this room at the last day of COP27, with so many parties and groups expressing mixed feelings to the outcome. Parties left Sharm el-Sheikh with renewed hope in the future of the planet and more determination to achieve the temperature goal of the Paris Agreement. Nkoli Omodu, AIT News, Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt.
Welcome to this new edition of Initiative Africa. This week we are in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, where the COP27 has just ended. In this episode, we meet those who are looking at the African priorities in the fight against climate change. And here are the main highlights. Creating awareness among young African generations to environmental issues is the choice of this doctoral student in economics from the University of Libreville in Gabon. She has become aware of the priorities of the continent and understands why Africa and the West do not necessarily have the same conception of the solutions to be implemented thanks to her studies. Marina Eyongve is our guest this week.
So our real expectations are that our realities in Africa should be taken into account at the international level and within this COP.
We meet a tribe of snake hunters in Guinea. With them, the tradition of saving lives of those threatened by reptiles has survived for generations.
It's an evil snake. The whole population was terrified. If we didn't catch this snake, it would have moved from neighborhood to neighborhood.
African youth from several countries present at COP27 came to defend their vision of the environment. We meet a new breed of young African activists.
So we are glad that we finally have a youth pavilion which is trying to mobilize and bring together young people to ensure that they can be able to share their ideas.
At the heart of Guinea, in Farana, survives an African tradition well guarded by a family, the Kairas, who are indeed a tribe of snake hunters trained for generations to save lives by treating victims of bites from these fearsome reptiles. They are now touring the country treating patients and catching snakes. Our correspondent Sayon Koroma followed them to Kobikoro, a village where a snake was terrorizing the inhabitants. Take a look.
It is a house of horror. Kaba, its owner, is one of the most desperate persons in Farana. In just 1 week, a deadly snake caused panic in this compound, killing 3 family members. The tenant's wife, grandson, and his only son, aged 14, have all succumbed to the reptile's deadly venom. It was a week of living dangerously for the inhabitants. Part of Farana was almost deserted, as the locals fled the danger posed by the poisonous snake.
It's an evil snake. The whole population was terrified. If we didn't catch this snake, it would have moved from neighborhood to neighborhood.
In the event, it was due to the Kairas tribe from the village of Tambaya, 80 kilometers away, that the snake was captured in time-honored fashion and its fate sealed in typical Kairas manner.
When we catch the snake, we put it in a sacred water. We rub it, then it dies on its own.
This is by no means an isolated case. Every year in Farana and nearby towns, the Kairas cast their spell over hundreds of the deadly reptiles. The tribe calls itself the Masters of Snakes. They are expert hunters and use their bare hands to capture the reptiles. It's a profession that has made the Kairas national celebrities, not just by catching snakes, but also by their ability to treat the reptiles' bites. The cure is a jealously guarded family secret dating back thousands of years.
I've been doing this for 60 years. I can't even work in the fields. Whenever I go there to work, I get a call that people have come because of snake bites. You've seen all those injured by snake bites. My job is to treat them.
Without needing to search for the reptiles, the seemingly natural ability to flush out the most dangerous snakes would seem to be a gift from above, helping save lives in Guinea and the sub-region. The father of 26 offspring shows off his collection of correspondence from all over the world.
Sierra Leone, Cote d'Ivoire, Liberia, and Mali. I served in all these countries. Here is a request from Sierra Leone. This is their stamp. I have traveled to all these countries in the same capacity. Today, I'm finally close to retirement.
He says he's tired now and leaves it to his children to take over. Members of the tribe pass on the knowledge from one generation to the next in this area that has the highest number of snakebite deaths in the country. But Kaira claims 24,000 lives have been saved. And the techniques taught are used to good effect in treating snake bites. This group are all victims of the reptiles. Among them is a 12-year-old girl who showed up in the village still suffering from the effects of a snake bite 8 years earlier.
Before, my daughter's wound was worse than this. The wound came up to here. But since I'm here, thank God. Otherwise, my daughter was completely deformed, and even these bones were becoming increasingly apparent. But now it's fine.
It's those who cannot afford to go to hospital that find salvation among the Kairas. Al-Hassan is the second oldest son of the tribe, in charge of extracting the snake's fangs. His patient today is a 4-year-old boy. But first, the Kairas' secret incantations must be performed. Only then will Al-Hassan gently remove the reptile's fangs with a magic cotton.
These are snake hooks that I have in my hand, and these healers don't ask us for millions or motorbikes. Nothing at all. You give what you can.
Al-Hassan will treat the boy with a paste of medicinal plants ground down using a pestle and mortar. The treatment can also be used by farmers who risk being bitten in their fields.
In case of a snake bite, you give this decoction to the victims. If you are doubting, you put this medicine in the water, then you throw it a little bit over here and over there. The snake will not come to that spot anymore, thanks to this medicine.
Once the reptiles have been made safe, they are kept in these boxes. The manner of extracting the cure from plants is a real revolution in traditional medicine and is now saving lives. And through their ancestral profession, the Kairas have also been able to make a living.
She's one of the leaders of French-speaking student clubs, a new associative network founded last month in Cairo by the Agence Universitaire de la Francophonie. Marina Eyongvei is a doctoral student in economics, passionate about defending the environment, and she decided to found a club to raise awareness among Gabonese youth about these fundamental issues. She shared her vision and hopes with Laurent Sustras and Nicolas Margeron.
Hello, you are a PhD student in economics. You come from Libreville. This is the first time that Africa is hosting the COP in Egypt. What do you expect from the COP?
Merci. De cette COP,
Thank you. From this COP, African and Gabonese youth in particular, we really expect that problems concerning the environment and its stakes at the level of our countries, our states,
concernant l'environnement et ces enjeux au niveau de nos pays, de nos États, soient pris en compte. Parce que habituellement,
will be taken into account, because usually problems are raised abroad by the Western countries, and we don't necessarily have the same problems. So our real expectations are that our realities in Africa should be taken into account at the international level and within this COP.
With more African solutions?
With more African solutions, indeed.
You studied economics. When did you first become interested in the environment?
Mon intérêt pour l'environnement.
My interest in the environment goes back to about 5 years ago.
Déjà, en tant que jeune,
as a young person living in Africa, especially in Central Africa.
En Afrique centrale, les questions relatives à l'environnement sont un peu récentes.
Environmental issues are relatively new because we have a tropical climate.
Un climat tropical, donc nous ne sommes pas directement impactés par les...
So we are not directly impacted or vulnerable to climate change.
Nous ne sommes pas vulnérables en tant que tels au changement climatique. Il y a d'autres régions.
In other regions, this vulnerability is felt in terms of drought and soil degradation.
Des sols. Donc cette question est un peu nouvelle.
This issue is a bit new and interests us a bit more because we are major players in, not reduction, but the limitation of environmental degradation and carbon absorption issues.
Également dans les questions d'absorption de carbone, nous sommes des acteurs majeurs, d'où
we are major players, hence the interest in recent years for the youth of Central Africa, of the Congo Basin region, to try to take ownership of environmental issues to make better decisions.
Afin de mieux donner nos décisions, afin de mieux prévoir
and to predict the future better, because we are the future decision makers of tomorrow, and we need to know how to manage our nations and our states and resources to maintain a certain balance in the ecosystem.
Is it economics that led you towards the environmental issues?
Oui, je dirais que c'est l'économie qui m'a emmené à l'environnement.
Economics brought me to the environment because my first contact with environmental issues came from my economics studies, because in the economics program we have subjects and specialties linked to the environment.
Nous avons des matières, nous avons des spécialités liées à l'environnement.
My first contact with these issues came from my training in economics, but also today, and even more so from the research center to which I belong, which is the Center for Public Economics, which deals with public policy issues, and in particular issues related to the environment and poverty.
You mentioned poverty and the environment. What are the major challenges for Gabon in this fight against climate change and the environment?
Merci. Les enjeux majeurs pour l'environnement.
Thank you. The major environmental challenges, and above all those directly linked to poverty, are indigenous populations' constraints in conserving our forests.
Autochtones pour la conservation de nos forêts. Parce qu'il faut le dire, au niveau du Gabon, les populations autochtones se ressourcent.
In Gabon, the indigenous people use the forests and cut down areas to cultivate crops and obtain the wood they need to build their homes.
Se ravitailler en bois nécessaire à la construction de logements. Alors, si il faut que l'on arrête.
So if we have to stop destroying forests, what do we propose in return to allow these populations to, how can I put it, satisfy their needs?
Comment dire, de satisfaire leurs besoins. Donc, il faudrait, en retour, que ces populations-là aient.
So in return, these populations should have the necessary funds to survive if they have to stop cutting down trees essential for their daily lives.
Des arbres qui sont nécessaires à leur vie au quotidien.
This is really what is at stake for the people of Gabon.
Pour les populations au niveau du Gabon.
Welcome to the second part of Initiative Africa from Sharm el-Sheikh, where the COP27 is ending. They came from Tanzania, Cameroon, DRC, Morocco or Eritrea to defend the cause of their countries and the African continent. I went to meet these young people from Africa who traveled to Sharm el-Sheikh to express their thoughts about the climate emergency and their hopes for change. Unsurprisingly, the greatest wish of these young people committed to the environment is that the promises made over the previous COPs will finally be followed by concrete actions. Let's listen to them.
World leaders, climate scientists, policymakers or NGOs weren't the only ones who gathered in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt for the latest UN Climate Summit, COP27. Children and the youth flocked to the conference venue, all eager to participate in the discussions about the urgent need to decarbonize high-emitting industries, adaptation strategies for climate-resilient agriculture, loss and damage compensation, but also transparency to build mutual trust and accountability. The first ever Children and Youth Pavilion reflected this exceptional strong presence.
So we are glad that we finally have a youth pavilion which is trying to mobilize and bring together young people to ensure that they can be able to share their ideas, exchange knowledge and enhance their capacity to effectively influence policies and action during this COP.
Led by the youth for the youth, the Children and Youth Pavilion has been set up to amplify the voices of young people and drive action on global climate policies vital to securing their future. The program of events has been co-created by a team of young people, supported by some of the world's leading youth networks and NGOs. The aim is to bring together young activists like Bonaventure Bondo Kikangala, who came all the way from the Democratic Republic of Congo.
I am a climate activist, and I am the national coordinator of an association called Youth Movement for the Protection of the Environment, an association in Congo which fights against climate change through the sensitization of the population, especially the youth.
Other young climate activists like Christelle Leslie Sil-Sikana, a Cameroonian based in Brussels, or Rukia Abdi from Kenya, as well as Frederick Binamungu Simon from neighboring Tanzania, came all the way to Sharm el-Sheikh to be part of the discussions.
I'm here at COP because I know what it feels like to be affected by climate change. My community are suffering back at home, and I'm here to be at the table where decisions are made to represent the voices of youth in the global south and those coming from the marginalized communities who are affected by climate change.
I'm here to represent the Yongo, so the youth constituency for UNFCCC, but also my organization, which is a civil society organization based in Brussels, which is called 1.2 Diaries, which is an organization who's advocating for the global south voices. But I'm also representing my own country, which is Cameroon.
I'm here to discover, I'm here to make new connection, I'm here to find myself on climatic actions. And now I think we don't need more talks, we need action. So I'm here to force out people to come up with tentative actions, no more policies, no more rise.
Many were disappointed by the lack of implementations from the previous COPs. And it was not just the case of the youth. Development institutions working on sustainable projects and initiatives with the youth also shared their regrets.
Well, actually, it's obvious that it's a disappointment. Based on the Paris Agreement, the COP, the previous COP in Glasgow, it's obvious that we have failed somewhere. We need to do things concretely, and the question of how do we deal with our planet? Do we consider it as our own property, or do we consider it that it has just been lent to us and we have to send it to give it back as a legacy to the next generation? It's based on that the West African Development Bank, BOAD, is currently processing and working.
While the aim of these climate activists is to meet other young people around the world who are passionate about taking action for climate justice, these young people came prepared to exchange knowledge, share solutions and demand action from world leaders.
I'm expecting that promises should be kept about
climate finance, because there's a $100 billion out there that didn't go to the African communities. I'm expecting carbon emissions to be reduced. And finally, I'm expecting that we go on from ambition to action.
While the youth demand actions, not just words, the BOAD, the West African Development Bank, has recently mobilized funds worth 750 million euros through a fundraising operation complying with climate and sustainable projects for the youth.
Our aim is to create future so that our young generation, the youth, can project themselves in the future. That's the one thing. The other thing, the way we process, the way we work is very simple. We work directly because, as you know, we have been accredited to 3 climate funds. So we work with them so that we can have cheap funding, the lowest possible, with projects compliance with the climate, with the sustainability.
Among other themes, the energy transition in Africa was also on everyone's lips.
Move from rhetoric to concrete actions and put an end to polluting energies. The energies that are today causing us harm. Shifts from fossil energies and turn to the promotion of 100% renewable energies accessible to all to create jobs for all and make energy cheaper.
While projects around the energy transition, climate or sustainability are rising in Africa, climate anxiety has become a real syndrome for the youth. A recent global survey by polling company Kantar has shown that immediate government inaction on climate issues is inextricably linked to eco-anxiety in people under the age of 25.
Let's hear this African voice about the continent's relationship with environmental protection. In the second part of her interview, Marina Eyongve tells us about the imperatives of education and governance. Let's listen to her.
Is the environment also about economics, about money?
Est-ce que l'environnement est une affaire d'argent?
Is the environment about money? No, because it is precisely about the need for money.
Le besoin d'argent,
This economic capitalism has led us to environmental degradation, and today the objective is to reduce this need for money to preserve the environment.
Au besoin d'argent afin de préserver cet environnement. Donc l'environnement n'est pas une question d'argent.
So the environment is not a question of money. It's a question of survival. Because if we continue with our habits of wanting to satisfy luxurious and tertiary needs, we are heading straight for the destruction of humanity. So we have to go back to the basics, satisfying primary needs, which will reduce and slow down the degradation of the environment.
You mentioned the Gabonese forest, one of the world's largest forests and an extraordinary long for the planet. Should Western countries contribute more to its preservation?
Bien sûr, les Occidentaux
Of course, Westerners should think about how to preserve this forest, this Gabonese forest, and more generally the forest of the Congo Basin, to maintain a balance in the ecosystem. And this is precisely the major challenge today of our states. We are asked to preserve, but in return we need to see the interest of preserving. Of course, the interest is general, but for those states that deprive themselves, there should be consistent and, above all, tangible return, because the whole point is not to grant money. But we must also ensure that this funding is channeled properly. And that's the major issue today, not just granting funding, but ensuring that this funding is properly channeled so that the population can benefit from it, and making sure that the poverty gap within these countries does not become wider.
There is a lot of talk about corruption as a factor in aggravating climate change problems. What do you think about this?
La corruption, c'est un problème mondial.
Corruption is a global problem, and indeed corruption essentially reduces the effect of certain policies. It disorients the objectives.
Ça désoriente les objectifs, et c'est un facteur sur lequel on devrait
And it's a scourge that we should really work on, especially in our states which have high corruption rates.
Donc, des financements liés à l'environnement.
So, environment-related funding should be better managed, and above all, better monitored. States should act as police to keep an eye on environmental funding, so that the affected populations are the first beneficiaries of this money. There should be a follow-up so that this is actually done on the ground.
You are head of a student club intended to raise awareness about environmental issues. What about governance, creating awareness, and the need to audit and control? Will it be part of this global reflection?
Oui, à terme, ça fera partie de cette réflexion.
Yes, in the long run, it will be part of this global reflection because the young people of today are the future decision makers of tomorrow. Education and awareness must therefore start
dès le bas âge. Donc, il faudrait déjà qu'ils prennent conscience à leur niveau.
At an early age. Young people should be aware of what is at stake in environmental matters, and above all, the impact that this will have, the responsibility of each person in the governance of environmental issues.
Governance sur les populations,
governance of the populations, governance in the policies, the public policies that will be put in place. For all these policies to achieve their objectives, we need decision makers with integrity,
bien formés,
who are well trained and available to give their best.
Well, that's all for us from COP27 in Egypt. Initiative Africa is over for today. You can, of course, find Marina Eyongve's interview and the replay of our programs on our website, africaonair.com, and feel free to share, like, and comment using the hashtag Initiative Africa. Take care of yourselves and see you next week for a new edition of Business Africa.
You find a lot of people will tell you, why should you enjoy yourself? Why should you cause this thing? You only die once. Die, so that you can be properly remembered as one who died for the good of all. We must all join hands to salvage this country. The media, the politicians, the academia, all of them.
Varied texture of hair, yet views on cultural and social significance of hair is same in Africa. From tribal styles to dreadlocks and the afro, as well as braids in recent times, African hair has been an aim to preserve these styles. They were carved in stones. By the 15th century, hair served as a carrier of messages in most West African societies.
It's a mourning hair. It's obtainable everywhere. Not only here, even in Ghana, in Cote d'Ivoire, most of those African countries I've traveled, I saw the same kind of pattern. That when somebody is dead and you want to mourn, the only symbol to show that she is mourning the husband or mourning the daughter or mourning the son, he has to go on this kind of hairstyle. Now, if you have much hair, the hem 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you can see it there. It's not like the crown that they gave to David in the Bible. Okay? So when you hem like that, as soon as you come around during the funeral and see the person, you don't need to ask that who is involved in that funeral. It is from the hair you will know.
Among the Wolof people of Senegal, young girls partially shaved their hair as an outward symbol to depict the fact that they are not dating yet. Whereas among the Efik-speaking people of Cross River State in Nigeria, a particular hairstyle is worn only by the bride at traditional wedding ceremonies, a cultural practice that still subsists to date.
Men in the past, in pre-colonial Yoruba and Nigeria, were always in most cases unclean shave or low cut. But the women in particular cherished the black hair so much that various styles were made out of it. Those unmarried had different styles, quite different from the married women. For instance, in Yoruba land where I come from, most of the ladies unmarried had their hair tooled from the right hand side to the left hand side, plaited from the right hand side to the left hand side, to show that they are still spinster, unmarried, and still in search. But for the married women, you see that the type of hairstyle and hairdo was totally different from the unmarried women, and that they took the plaiting from different angles of the head, and it was a kind of network that would join at the top and then moved to the back, and not to the front or sideways, but to the back, to show that they are married.
When they want to do the monankim, they go on this kind of hairstyle. If you want the they call monankim, they go on this kind of hairstyle. They want the plaid short hair here, they coil it, take another thread to add, it goes round. That's the one they call water today. They said plaid me water. Okay. Now that one is always done on festivity when they want to perform like New Year festival, a visitor is coming, they want younger guys to come and display. For those visitors, they go on that kind of hairstyle. Or like the monarchy, the fasting room, on the last day they're coming out, they go on that kind of hairstyle. This one relates to beauty. In those days, they were regarded, they said this one is pretty. She will not go on any kind of hairstyle apart from this. She will hem here and hem here, and now plait about 3 or 4, depending on the quantity of hair you have. Like this one she had enough hair, they plaited 1, 2, 3, 4, and hem here, hem here. They say, oh no, that woman is pretty. They had a style of hair to be used by someone who is pretty. My looking at the hair, they say, not too bad. She's a queen, They were not just plaiting hair because they want to plait. Each of the hair they plait has a significance.
During the 19th century, when slavery was abolished in most parts of the world, including the United States, many black people began to feel the pressure of how to fit into the mainstream white society, and so began to readjust their hair texture accordingly.
Attempts were made by the Europeans to eliminate the culture and try to influence. Even they used some of the Africans against the Africans, like Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington was brainwashed by the Europeans, and then was sponsored by an ex-slave too. He compromised, and by so doing, some of the blacks too, I think they joined in the campaign that they had nothing, they should accept their fate. And then since destiny has brought them to the West Indies, to the Americas, then they had no choice than to accept what God had done for them.
In the 1930s, Rastafarianism, a theology developed in Jamaica from the ideas of a political activist, Marcus Garvey, who wanted to improve the status of his fellow blacks. Believers, better known as Rastafarians, are forbidden from cutting their hair. Rather, they twist it into dreadlocks.
Dreadlock itself and Rastafarianism. Rastafari, which in history was Haile Selassie of Ethiopia. The original name was Rastafari. But because of the achievements and the bravery, the boldness of this man that confronted the Europeans, because he was the only person invited from Africa in the League of Nations and proved his worth. So he was seen as a symbol of African bravery, African might. So many people derived that impetus from Rastafari, known as Haile Selassie. Rastafarianism now became a kind of trend in the 1930s and 40s, to the extent that it extended to 1970s when musicians like Bob Marley and the rest picked it up from there.
Propagated by Hindu yogis who escaped to places like Jamaica, where their dreadlock hairstyle and religious piety was copied by Rastafarians. The first known examples of the hairstyle, however, dates back to ancient Egypt, where dreadlocks appeared on Egyptian artifacts. The Old Testament also recounts the tale of Samson and Delilah, in which a man's potency was directly linked to the 7 locks on his head. The profile of this hairstyle increased following the tremendous successes of the legendary reggae star Bob Marley in the 1970s. Today, people wear dreadlock hairstyles for reasons ranging from economic to spiritual.
We have had dreadlocks, braids from time immemorial. In my place, we have dada. It was a form of dreadlock, the natural one. Then we also had in the Bible, we had records in the Bible about the Nazarites, that they must not cut their hair. It served as a kind of communication between you and the Almighty Jah. Even in Yoruba, and the worshippers of Shango also are always in dread. And you know, Shango worshippers, they communicate and they had form of commune with the gods. People should not associate smoking, drinking, marijuana, and the rest to those people that wear dreadlocks. Because today, when you are in dread, people think you are either marijuana, smoker, or this or that. It has more. It goes beyond the issue of just for fashion or for entertainment. It is more spiritual.
The Afro hairstyle, which emerged in the 1960s during the civil rights movement, was considered a symbol of rebellion, pride, and empowerment. As black people protested against racial segregation and oppression, the eye-catching style took off, an assertion of black identity, in contrast to previous trends inspired by the mainstream white society.
Afro hairstyle, also black hair, was not originated by the Europeans in Europe. Afro hair, like the word connotes, Afro, African. So Afro hairstyle was an indigene of Africa, domiciled in Africa. So in the course of slavery and slave trade, the idea was taken abroad. But unfortunately, like I said, in a quest to eliminate all forms of African past and culture, the slaves were compelled to reduce the Afro in diaspora. Afro regenerated as a result of unfulfilled promises by the Europeans. The Europeans promised them in the First and the Second World Wars. Probably I should go a bit into history, that most of the blacks were used as mercenaries in both the First War and the Second World War on the side of the country that captured them, promising them that, okay, you people will be equated and be given a balanced equation, not only in economy, but even in politics. But unfortunately, after the Second World War, those promises were not fulfilled. And the people got emancipated, but they were not integrated into the politics of the United States of America and elsewhere.
African civilization had a variety of inspiring hairstyles like braid, twist, plait, dreadlocks, afro, and reversed braid, which in Nigeria is considered a tribal style associated with the Yorubas and Fulanis. Though these hairstyles have been modernized over time, they are rooted in shared past. Hair making in Africa has much more significance than beautifying a woman. This explains why much time is spent making and adorning it.
Mama.
While traditional African hairstyles are suitable only for specific events, contemporary styles like braids are for all seasons.
There are some styles that cannot go away. They started it from beginning. That means they started braiding that hair even before I grew up, and people still like the hair. Some hair like Bob Marley, some hair like twist, he doesn't go out. People braid it and re-braid it and re-braid it, and whenever they do it, you still see that the hair will look fine. Even when some styles will come out, like Ghana weaving. You know, Ghana weaving wasn't in vogue before. It was later that we learned that one. But you can't just compare it to braids, Bob Marley, or twist, like fishbone, faders, all these ones will do it. But Bob Marley and twist, they never go away.
The hair that have ready is Ghana weaving.
Due to the belief system in most African societies, which suggests that a single strand of hair can be used to cast a spell on its owner, and that the hair is a channel for spiritual interaction with God. Hairdressing was always the work of trusted friends or relatives. Today, the story has changed.
They find it interesting, because we guys, as a man, we take our time to make their hair, and they feel relieved and they feel relaxed. Because whenever we are working for them, we make it perfect, and whenever they are going, they go home smiling.
From when I was small, I like making children's hair. And when I make their hair, it gives me extra joy. That's how I started making hair. Even in my secondary school, I make free hair to them, make free hair to the women in the village and my friends in the village. Some of them were asking me, why are you not making hair and collecting money from people? But by then, it did not come to my memory until I came to Abuja. Then I decided that I'll be making hair and be collecting money from people, because when I do hair, it looks very neat. And also, it promotes Africa country.
Much as concerted efforts are being made by the West through several avenues to transform the black woman who is viewed today as fashion conscious, it is obvious that her love for African hair look in whatever appearance cannot be diminished. To the contrary, she blends her African hair into whatever fashion is trendy at the moment.
Weave-on is not our culture. We will just imitate white from fixing their hair. And most men in this Africa, they like African braiding. That's why they will ask their wife, even though they don't like it, their husband will ask them to braid their hair so that they will see the real beauty in them.
The desire for African women to preserve her cultural identity, which has continually been under threat, has taken the making of African hair to different levels.
I have a lot of friends, they travel abroad to make hair. In fact, $500 to make a hair. In fact, they're making it big time because they use it to sustain themselves, to survive there. So it's a good business and they're making it very big.
With the hair, I'm being able to achieve to pay my bills, to do other good things, as you can see, giving well to with the money and feet.
This job took me to different houses, even some houses that I supposed not to be there. In this Abuja, I'll just find myself there. When I get to the place, I'll look at their faces and I'll notice that I've come to a place that freely I cannot come there. But because of this hair making, I'll be able to enter that house. Some other places, I go to Lagos for this hair because when they like my hand or my hairstyle, they'll just call me. They don't mind what it will take them. They'll just ask me, come. They will pay my transport or my flight. I'll just go there and make their hair. And then I come back to Abuja.
Though educated, Amaka Ogbu is one of those who prefer making African hairstyles for others, not only as a source of livelihood, but to contribute her quota in projecting and preserving their unique African cultural heritage, no matter the challenge.
We have some challenges like standing up. We stand a lot because when we are making a particular style, you can't just sit down. When you sit down, you will not get it properly. So you have to stand up. But even though we are standing up, we don't take it as anything. Since we make money from it, then you do it with joy.
As early as 6:30 a.m. each day, except Sundays, Amaka bids goodbye to her family and makes her way through a narrow path out.
Customers we have, but during weekend, if I'm going to housework, sometimes I leave my house past 6 or even before 6, so that I will meet up from the house and still come to the market. Like Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, we have lesser work because people go to work, workers go to work. They can't just leave their office and start coming here to make hair. It's some people that work in a private company or in the market that come during the week. But during weekend, most workers come with other people. People are chanced mostly on the weekend, so we have more customers during the weekend.
Mpape, an Abuja suburb, is 10 minutes drive to the city center. The lack of access road and basic amenities in small settlements here, like Ruwangada, makes the cost of housing in this area cheaper. Most of the residents, like Amaka and her husband, own their living apartments.
I'm not making mouth. I'm just thanking God because God has blessed me a lot through this work. I think I did my diploma through the help of this hair. And where we are staying, I think we are not renting, we build it.
In less than an hour, she arrives just in time to beat the 7:30 a.m. opening time of the popular Wuse market in the Abuja city center. She goes through a routine security check and makes her way to a shelter built by the market administration for people of her trade. The hair makers, men old and even men, appear to be happy with their waiting customer. Soon enough, she finds one, haggles over the cost a little, and settles down to the process of hair making. The open market is not the only place African hairstyles can be made. Yet, people trooping here in and out of season to have their hair made for some reasons.
No, not yours, just the package. Big is children hair.
Some used to come here because the price is lesser. Some choose to come here so that they will be able to choose any style they want. When you go to the salon, you just see few people there. But when you come to the market, you see many people braiding their hair. You'll be able to choose the style you want and then to look around.
We don't have fixed price. It depends how you discuss with the customers. Yes. 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. Like the one I'm doing now is 7,000.
Wonder why these ladies choose to braid their hair in the midst of all sorts of trendy hair extensions? The response is same for both the young and old.
Well, I chose to braid my hair because I prefer it to doing funky hair and Brazilian type of hair.
My husband loves it. When he see me that I braid my head, he always like me more than I should fix. When I fix, I always like masquerade.
It was interesting to find that some girls and women still embrace these traditional hairstyles, like in other parts of Africa and among Africans in the diaspora. The youths have come to identify with African hairstyles, adding glamour to it, a development which spells hope for the future of African hair.
For me, I'm still in shock because a good man just left us. When I say a good man, a very, very good man. I've told people that Chief Raymond Dokwesi, High Chief, is such a man that did not, and I told him that I have this movie that I want to take to the cinema. He called the meeting. The funny thing is that I was meeting chairman for the first time ever. He called the meeting and he asked the board about this movie, Domitila, this guy going to the cinema, and everybody said that there's no cinema going culture anymore. People don't go to the cinemas. I was shocked when chairman said, Zeb, I'm in. I will do it. What do you want? Then the biggest promo in Nigeria then was Besina Hedges Loud in Lagos. I said that is exactly the kind of promo that I wanted. I told him, and he said, Zeb, I'll give you something low. Because I'm not sure I've ever had the opportunity to say thank you to him. Yes, we have, done a couple of things together where we sit together, we talk about the past, and we are happy and all that. But I was looking to that day that I would do something that's so massive, but he's gone. It's hard to take. I just want to pray for the family, for the great Lord to give them the fortitude to be able to pass through this tough period. They are not in this alone. We are in this with them. Yeah, it's tough to take. I pray that
Hello and welcome to Health Digest, a program that brings to you news analysis and development on everything that concerns your well-being. I'm Ogom Ezedimbu. Today on the program, we shall be looking at matters arising from the ongoing strike by the joint health sector unions and other issues affecting the health sector. Our guest today is a National Vice Chairman, Joint Health Sector Unions, Obina Ubona. But before we go further, let's bring you some health stories.
On health news today, some key players in Nigeria's health sector want the federal government to increase and sustain the 10 naira per litre to 30 naira per litre. The excise tax on non-alcoholic carbonated and sweetened beverages as contained in the Finance Act. The health